Hi, everybody. Welcome to Your Money Map, sponsored by the Alliance for Lifetime Income. I'm your host, Jean Chatzky. Very glad to have all of you along with me today because let's face it, retirement planning can be challenging, sometimes downright scary, and not to make you nervous, but there's a little something my guest today calls the retirement savings time bomb that we all need to watch out for. So, what is that? Exactly. Well, according to Ed Slott, who many of you know and love, it is made up of an explosive landscape of costly tax traps, penalties, and a complex maze of rules, all of which take aim at your untaxed retirement accounts. Yes, we're talking about your 401ks, your IRAs, all of those assets that are not in Roths. Those are the ones that you have to worry about. Those are the ones we are talking about today. And so the question is, how do you diffuse the retirement savings time bomb? How do we protect these assets that we have worked so hard for so many years to build? Ed Slott is here to break it all down. Ed is a nationally recognized IRA and retirement planning distribution expert. He is a best-selling author, a speaker, a TV personality. You've probably seen him on your local PBS station. He's also the founder of Ed Slott and Company, the nation's leading provider of technical IRA education for financial advisors, CPAs, attorneys, and of course, people like you and me. And last but not least, he is the author of The Retirement Savings Time Bomb Ticks Louder. That's his brand new book. We're very excited to have him back. And remember, if you're watching, we like this show to be as interactive as possible. I am watching for your questions in the chat. If you've got questions, about how and when to get your money out of your retirement accounts, how distribution works, RMDs, whether to do a Roth conversion. We've got the man today here to answer them. Ed, welcome back to the show.
Well, it's great to be back with you. Thanks, Jean.
So you wrote a book called The Retirement Savings Time Bomb. Why now is this time bomb all of a sudden ticking louder?
Well, there's a lot of factors happening now. Number one, the demographics. More people have them. Also, I don't know if you saw last week, the Investment Company Institute, that's an organization that tracks how much money is in all different kinds of accounts, but also retirement accounts. And they said as of the end of June, the second quarter this year, $40 trillion in retirement savings, most of which in IRAs and 401ks, untaxed money, money that has not yet been taxed. So, how does that sound to a revenue hungry Congress? Sounds like a big, juicy steak, doesn't it? Just waiting to get eaten up. And that's how they look at your retirement savings because we made that deal, the deal with the devil. Like any deal with the devil, there's a day of reckoning, and they have a name for that date, your required beginning date. That's when you're forced, even if you don't want to take the money out and pay tax on that money. And I'm worried about the debt levels of I don't even know what it is, 34, 35 trillion. All I know is if they have to round up to the nearest trillion, it's a lot. That means this is money. Where is that? How is that going to get paid off? The whole country is running on a credit card. So the only thing they can do is cut services, which are not popular to anybody, or raise taxes, which is also not popular, but they can find little ways to do it around the edges. And I'm worried about future rates going higher for the people who have saved the most.
Yeah, I actually have had the experience because I have listened to you now for many years. And so I have some assets that are in Roths, but I also have some traditional retirement assets. And I've had the experience of going to the financial advisor and looking at what my withdrawals look like pre-tax and then what they look like after tax. And it is a very frightening picture. The bite that taxes, even at today's rate, take out of take out of your potential future income. And so that requires planning, especially because, as you point out frequently, the rules keep changing. In recent years, Congress passed a number of new laws that impact retirement plans. Can we talk about some of the big ones and how they impact people?
Yeah, the biggest one was probably the one called the Secure Act. I can't even say it with a straight face. My history of studying tax law for 40 years is one constant that has never changed. Whenever Congress names a tax law, you can almost always bet that whatever they name it, it will do the opposite. So when I saw an act called the Secure Act, I said to myself, hold on to your wallets. And sure enough, it was a giant revenue grab. They need to take money that would have otherwise been taxed in the future and grab it now. Many people may not realize it, but before the Secure Act became effective, that's 4 years ago already, 2020, when you passed your IRAs or 401ks on to your beneficiaries, they could do what was called a stretch IRA, where the beneficiaries could defer the tax and take just little pieces out over their entire lives. Depending on their age, they could stretch or extend distributions out for 20, 30, 50, 60 years. Congress put an end to that. I guess they felt they didn't want to wait that long for their money. They also felt that people who save for retirement are the ones who should benefit. It shouldn't be used as an estate planning vehicle for their beneficiaries who they say didn't earn it. Maybe there's something to that. So they killed the stretch IRA and said all this money for most people will now have to come out by the end of the 10th year after death. So what that does, it shortens the window when all this income has to pass through and be taxed. When you push more income through a shorter window, kind of like a fire hose effect, more money is going to be lost to taxes.
Yes, I'm again, I feel like we're talking about my life here today, Ed. We sadly lost my mother this year, and
Oh,
so for the first time in my life, I'm the beneficiary of an IRA that was not mine, that I did not grow. I my brothers and I have an inherited IRA, and we're going through the process now of taking the money out over 10 years. I've already made my first tax payment on the withdrawal. So it is something that you often have to deal with. And I would think, especially now, as we look at this huge transfer of wealth that is expected, a lot of that money is going to be in the form of IRAs and other retirement accounts. When we think about dealing with these changes in the laws, um, but also the structure as it exists today, you make the case, and I like this analogy, that retirement planning is like a golf tournament.
right.
That building assets is the front nine, but the back nine is actually taking those assets out, which involves taxes, and you basically say people are not playing that game very well.
They don't play the second half well. Now that it's football season, I'll use a football analogy. The first half and the second half, rather than the front nine and back nine, same idea. But, in football, they have a saying, the score at halftime is irrelevant. Give me the score at the end of the game, and then I'll tell you who won. It's the same thing with retirement, because you can only keep what you keep after taxes. You can only spend what you keep after taxes. And that's a big a factor that most people don't take into account. So the first half of the game, as you said, is the building, earning, saving, and investing. And most people, when they come to retirement, they think they've done it. I've known people, they say, oh, look, I have all the money I'll ever need for retirement. So they played the first half of the game. They think they're done. They run off the field, congratulate themselves. Meanwhile, the IRS comes out. They're playing the second half. They're playing nobody, so they win. You have to play on the second half. Another good analogy, I'm sure you've heard this, people who climb Mount Everest. Uh, there are lots of people who die. I don't know why they do it, but they die. But they don't die on the way up. They die on the way down because they didn't have a plan, an exit strategy to get out. They're so happy that they got to the top. Now all their resources are gone. There's a big lineup. You hear all these stories. It's the same kind of thing. You have to have the exit strategy to minimize taxes and make it last as long as you do and beyond.
So that those are a couple of different things. You want to make the money last as long as you do, and you want to minimize taxes. Let's talk about them together or separately, however you think is appropriate. But let's break it into pieces. When you're talking about making the money last as long as you do, what are your favorite strategies there, knowing that we are living very long lives these days?
Yeah, this is counterintuitive, but the secret to making your money last is to pay taxes now. So when I say that in seminars and people will say, Ed, how am I going to have more? If I do what you say, I'll immediately have less by paying taxes. That's the key to this, to get this money out while rates are at historic lows now. The key to all good tax planning is to always pay taxes at the lowest rates. It's very simple. So now is that time. Rates are the lowest you'll ever see. They're on sale. Everybody likes a sale. Look what people do on that Black Friday after Thanksgiving. They trample each other to death to save $10 on a TV or something. I'm sorry to say, when you go to those sales, that thing in the store, you don't actually have to buy it. But with the
Right.
taxes, you do. It's not if, but when. So you're going to pay that bill. It's just a matter of when. So if you know you're going to pay it anyway, why not get it on sale? So now is the time to strike and start trimming, reducing these taxable balances and moving the money into better accounts like Roth IRAs, tax-free accounts. You do pay tax up front, but this is money you're going to pay anyway, probably on a higher balance at a future date, at probably at a higher rate. Now you have the time to strike and watch your Roth IRA grow 100% for you rather than having to share it with Uncle Sam.
Lisa, I think, agrees with you. She says, why do we even save pre-tax unless saving this way will shift you into a lower tax bracket? And she clarifies, why do we save or invest this way? I mean, she's suggesting that you make your original contributions into Roth accounts, even if it means not getting the tax deduction on those contributions. Is that typically the best advice for most people?
Lisa could be doing my seminars right now. I say the exact same thing. In fact, the seminar a couple of days ago, I said to a bunch of advisors in Washington, D.C., I said, here's what you have to do. Stop having your clients contribute to IRAs and 401ks. And they looked at me like four heads, they went, what? I said, why do you do that? And I just bait them with that question. Why would you do that? And always somebody else said, well, the match. All right. Don't worry. I'll get to that in a minute. But the other thing they yell out is the deduction. It's not a real deduction. It's just a timing difference. To me, a real deduction is something you get to keep. You give to charity, you get a deduction. You get the benefit, you don't have to give it back. Home mortgage interest deduction, same thing. But a deduction, I don't even know why they call it that, but that's what they call it, for making a contribution to your 401k is not a real deduction. You know what it really is? And Lisa got this right. It's a loan you're taking from the government to be paid back at some future date, probably at the worst possible time in retirement when you want more stability and don't want to worry about future rates. And I've been saying this for a while, and just funny you said that. I just saw in today's US, is this today's, this morning's? Yeah, USA Today. We can do like they do with the hostage thing. So, it's live, it's the real paper.
Oh, Ed, terrible, terrible, terrible.
Well, anyway, this is the one. Look at this. Can you see today's headline? I don't know if you could see that.
Why 401k IRA shouldn't be your only retirement savings. But I think that headline is a good point. There are people who suggest that you have buckets of retirement savings, that some
Right.
are pre-tax and some are post-tax. Do you agree with that?
Yes, what I'm saying is don't add to the problem. Your IRA and 401k is a growing, building debt. People used to like when I had more clients. I don't do that much client work anymore. But when I had clients, they would love to come in and show me their statements. They have all this money on the IRA, and I used to say, "Well, let me see that statement. Is that your name, John Smith?" And I would take my pen and said, "No, you didn't. This is a joint account. We have to add Uncle Sam on here. There's two
because
people on this account."
well,
Uh,
Rachel is wondering if
yeah.
you have a higher earner, what then? Because if you have a higher earner, there are caps on what you can contribute off the top into Roth accounts. She asks, should they do a backdoor Roth or wait for a low earnings year? And can you
No,
explain how this? Can you explain? Take a step back and explain how this works for people who
Yeah,
are
by the way,
not.
there's two kinds of Roths. The conversions, they come in two flavors, conversions and contributions. The big money I'm talking about is in conversions, where you pay up and convert chunks, and there are no income limits on that. What she's talking about is the income limits for the annual contribution, 7,000 a year, 8,000 for this year if you're 50 or over. Those you can do the backdoor Roth. I don't even know why they have limits because it's so easy to get around them if you want to. Instead, you make a contribution to a non-deductible IRA and then convert that to a Roth. You end up in the same place. So I don't even know why they have uh, compensation or income limits like that. It's ridiculous. So anyway, the point is not to add to the problem. I go two ways. Not only don't add to your IRAs and 401ks because you're just building on something that's growing partly for the government you're building on something that's eroding. Imagine if you had a house and it was loaded on the bottom with termites eating away at the account. Would you say, hey, let's put another story on there? Let's build out while the termites are eating it to death. Those termites are the taxes, the future taxes on your retirement account. So Lisa is exactly correct. People should have a plan to start moving money to Roth IRAs and stop contributing, especially if they're adding to balances that will cost them future taxes later. Now, on the question where they say, and this is a great question, because I get this from advisors, they'll say, Ed, but shouldn't somebody with it's in a high bracket do the 401k for the deduction? I said, no, even if you're in a high bracket, the bracket in the future could even be higher. You don't know that. First of all, you don't want to take deductions when in good tax planning, you take deduction when rates are high. They're not high now. Even the top rate isn't high. You take income when rates are low and you take deductions when rates are high. Rates are low now. The deduction is worthless. So I would create a plan to start moving to tax-free territory in Roth IRAs. And it's the
So
same thing. That's what this article I happen to see today said the same exact thing. They must have gone to my seminar.
they might have. Now, I want to get a little tactical here. And by the way, Jabbar or Habar, I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name, seems to agree with you about the savings crisis here looming large. Um, in your book, you basically say there are 5 steps to diffusing the retirement savings time bomb. Can you walk us through them?
Well, this leads to the bigger problem that having money in IRAs or 401ks is just too complicated now. They keep changing the rules, as you say. They had the Secure Act, but that's not the end of it. There's IRS regulations, proposed regulations, final regulations. That's just this year. And they keep changing the rules. It's almost impossible to know how to take money out on the legal schedules, RMDs, required minimum distributions for IRA owners and beneficiaries. It depends who you are, how old you are, what category you're in. It's just so complicated. So one of the first steps, I say timing is everything. Time it smartly is the first step in the book because there's penalties. It's like an obstacle course full of these tax landmines. If you take it out too soon, it's a 10% penalty. If you take it out early, if you miss a required minimum distribution, it's another penalty on the other side for not taking it out. And then they have all kinds of penalties for putting too much in and not enough. Wherever you go, it's almost like you're forced, even rollovers, even timing rolls, 60 days to roll over. We've seen cases where people have lost their IRA because they did more than the allowable rollover. Matter of fact, that just happened to a famous actor. He's dead now, so he doesn't have a problem. but it was Sonny Corleone, James Caan.
James Caan.
Yeah. Well, a couple of years ago, he attempted to do a rollover with these fancy Beverly Hills accountants and attorneys and financial advisors he had. They broke every rollover rule, didn't know what they did. P.S. Then they made it worse. They wanted to show that they were right. He had died since, but all he was trying to do is move assets he had in one IRA to another. Sounds simple, but he had a different kind of assets. He had hedge funds and complicated things, and they didn't know how to do it, and they did it all wrong, and they blew the 60-day rule. See, that to me is an easy one. And then they made it worse by going to tax court to claim that they did it right. And one of their arguments in front of a court with their name as the attorneys there is saying, we say you have a year and a half for the 60-day rule. The judge laughed them out of the tax court. So they lost their PS. The heirs, the estate of James Caan, had to pay about $1 million in taxes and penalties just blowing a rollover. So the timing is everything. When you put money in, when you take money out, it's very complicated to have a tax deferred a retirement account because they're all subject to these rules.
What's step 2?
Step 2 is the security, I call, setting up your beneficiary form. That's another area where many, and I have 2 chapters on that because it's so complicated now. They made it more complicated because now we have 3 different classes of beneficiaries, and the rules change if the person died after they began taking RMDs or before, and what kind of beneficiary they are. It's very complicated, and it all starts with having an up-to-date beneficiary form. This is something that sounds easy, but most people blow it. And sometimes it's not their fault. You've seen a lot of mergers and acquisitions in the financial services business. So all of a sudden your account was with one institution, now it's with another. And we found that the beneficiary forms are not carrying over correctly. Sometimes they just don't lost it or don't have I don't know how they do it. You'd think with technology it should just carry over, but sometimes they actually input it, because I've had cases come across to me where people questioned it and they said, I know they typed it in manually because the people's names are spelled wrong. So they're doing that, or they just named the estate because they didn't know. And that's the worst beneficiary. So the beneficiary form is the one form that will determine how much you keep or your beneficiaries keep and how much goes to the government. That should be kept up to date. You should have it in writing. Check the forms online, because the forms online may be the ones that count, even if you have a paper copy. First of all, you don't want to make literally a federal case out of this. You want to know your beneficiary forms will hold, the right people get it. Because if you leave it to the state or it goes to your estate and the state decides, most times it may go to the right people. But with second marriages and different step family and all, sometimes people get disinherited completely.
Yeah, and not in a meaningful way. The third step in doing this correctly.
All right, now we're getting into my favorite step, the Roth IRA. This is where we talked about this before. I'm a big believer in the Roth. I'm not saying it's for everybody. Well, actually, I am saying it's for everybody, but because it's the best single account anybody can own. The only question is, how much are you willing to pay to get it? But like I said before, it's on sale. You'll never get this deal again. This is better than those Black Friday deals. This deal will not be here again. And you get rewarded. You buy yourself tax freedom. Once you have a Roth IRA, a lot of all these rules I just talked about don't even apply to you. There are no RMDs for the rest of your life and even 10 years beyond under the Secure Act to your beneficiaries. They hardly have to worry about anything. And that's even better for you if you have a large IRA and you want to name a trust for control. Roth IRAs work better there. And you don't have to worry. And if you need the money during retirement, just take it out on your schedule. By converting, you're controlling the tax rates you pay. If you wait and don't do anything and let your IRA grow, at 73, it's out of your control. You're forced to start taking RMDs. The R stands for required. You're required to take these amounts no matter what the tax rate is. Too bad. That's what it is. Now you have what I always say, you don't have your plan, you have the government plan. Now you're constrained.
Exactly.
So I
Exactly.
love Roth, especially for IRA owners and beneficiaries. You have to pay to get it, but taxes are on sale. And maybe a good plan is to do a series of annual smaller conversions over time, taking advantage of these low brackets, 12%, 22%, 24%. It's amazing how much you could push through really low rates.
I think that a lot of people don't remember that. They think if I'm going to convert an IRA, I have to convert the whole thing. In fact, you can
Right.
convert in chunks. You can do it over time, and and that can be a good strategy. I don't know what number four and number
Four is
five
life
are.
insurance. Four is life insurance, and five is the overall estate plan. So it leads all the way up to that. Life insurance, and just so you know, I don't sell life insurance. I'm a tax advisor, a CPA. I don't sell stocks, bonds, funds, insurance, annuities, none of that. Never did. But as a tax advisor, I have to tell you the tax exemption, the income tax exemption for life insurance is the single biggest benefit in the tax code, not used nearly enough. Maybe people feel odd about it because they only think of the death benefit. There are lifetime benefits. I have it myself. I'm talking about permanent cash value life insurance. I call it like a super Roth IRA. Same idea. You could take funds out of the IRA and pay the tax and use some of that money to fund life insurance that builds tax-free cash value. The similarity between Roth IRA and life insurance is they both build income tax free. So it removes the uncertainty, the worry about what future higher tax rates could do to your standard of living in retirement. Plus, there is that death benefit. If you don't need it during your life, you can use it during your life. Most people don't realize that as a savings account. I always throw out the question in my seminars. I say, can you be the beneficiary of your own life insurance without dying? And most people say, how is that part? The answer is yes. You can, without getting into the complexities, and always use a professional insurance advisor. That's not me. But you can, in its simplest form, essentially take an advance on your life insurance. So
Borrow
when
from
I
it.
tell people that, they say, well, this is good. But then they say, well, if I do that, won't my kids get less? I always tell them, who cares about them? They're going to get plenty. You worry too much. You worry too much about them. Whatever they get, it's gravy. You have to, in planning, you got to take care of yourself first.
One of the ways that you're taking care of yourself, we know from previous conversations, is that you use annuities, or you have thought about using annuities in your own planning.
Oh,
Can you
yeah.
talk about the role that annuities play and the role that you believe that they should be playing for people?
Yeah, guaranteed income. In these times of uncertainty, guaranteed income is king, not for everything, but I had it. What really turned me on, my mother had these years ago, obviously before she died years ago, but my father died many years earlier. And my mother was like the Energizer bunny. They told me, she was going to go, she went into her 90s before she died. Matter of fact, even in her 90s, she was still looking for a man. And she used to complain, I can't find anybody. I want a date, not a patient. Nobody could keep up with her. She was a real character. But the advisor she had, not me, because I don't do that, but the advisor she had was a sharp guy. When my father died, she took some of the money she used, a lot of it, she sold the home we grew up in and put it in these 4 or 5 annuities. Turned out, I didn't know at the time how great this would be for her. Uh, those checks came in every month, no matter how old she got, no matter how sick she got, no matter how the market performed. It was financial security. The greatest gift you can give to your family is the gift of your own financial security. Or to put it another way, the greatest gift you can give your children is to not move in with them. People want financial security, and not for everything, but my rule is for your basic monthly living expenses, whatever that number is. I think that has to be guaranteed. Oh, the stock market's down, we can't watch TV this week or pay the light bill or something. You can't live like that. And yes, I have other money. I have these annuities too. Matter of fact, I have something better. I learned from my mother, the only thing better than guaranteed income for life. If you've been listening to me on this program, you should know my answer. The only thing better than guaranteed income for life is what I have. What do I have?
You have a
Guaranteed
Roth.
tax tax-free
Free
income for
income.
life.
Yeah.
Guaranteed tax-free income for life. I have the annuities in my Roth IRA. So if I need guaranteed income, I can pull from the Roth. It's guaranteed and it's tax-free, but not for everything. I have a stock account, but the annuities are there kind of like a guardrail to soften the downside risk as a protection against downside risk. So that's where I see annuities coming in. And I'll tell you, my brother, my sister, they didn't realize they're not financial people, but my mother never had issues. It's an amazing thing to see a person living into their 90s and they never have to worry because the checks keep coming in. I think that's what kept her alive.
It very well may have been. Um, these are complicated concepts that we've been talking about. They're tough to wrap your brain around. We're not necessarily skilled or schooled in understanding them. Where do you find somebody to help you with this?
Well, that's an interesting question because I hate to say it, because we train our company more financial advisors in this area, not on investments. Again, I don't do investments, on the tax planning, getting that money out. We train more financial advisors, CPAs, professionals than anyone in the country. And most financial advisors don't have a handle on this because they were mostly trained wrong. The CPAs, my colleagues, were trained to do tax returns. Well, most people who do tax returns are really just history teachers. They tell you what already happened. You can't change it once you're sitting with the account. They sit here. I do the taxes, and that happened to me many times. Well, I can't change it. You got to look ahead. The financial advisors were mostly trained to bring in assets and make you money in investments. And even if they do that job right, that's only half the game. That's where we started out, Gene. That's only half the game, getting it out. So most of them are not trained. We do train financial advisors. That's a big part of our business. You can go on our website, irahelp.com. I have no financial again, no investments or anything like that. We're an education company, but we train advisors, and it's not like one seminar. These advisors that are members of our advanced study group, educational group. It's called Ed Slott's Elite IRA Advisor Group for tax planning for retirement. They're not the only ones, but at least they've made a commitment to learn about this. So you have
Yeah.
to have an advisor. If you go to our website, irahelp.com, there's a button on there that says find an advisor all over the country. There's about 500 of them. I wish there were more because to me, that's not even 1% of advisors. That means 99% of the advisors don't have the knowledge in these rules that you want them to have, because you may only get one shot. These rules are not only complex, but they're generally unforgiving. You don't get a lot of second chances to fix a mistake.
Last question for you as we wrap this up in the last minute we've got together. 3 tips for the folks who are watching today. What do you want to send them away with? What should they do right now?
Well, it's a wrap up of what we just talked about. Number one, check your beneficiary forms. You may be amazed. I'll give you a tip. If you're watching or listening to this and you were divorced recently or even a few years ago, I would definitely check that beneficiary form because the ex might still be on there. I don't know what the relationship is, but chances are that's not the person you want to get your retirement savings. That's where we see the biggest problems. Make sure you have an up-to-date beneficiary form named primary and contingent beneficiaries, and check that they agree with what's online at your custodian. Number two, we talked about playing the second half of the game, addressing the issues, the RMDs, getting that money out, start working on minimizing taxes for your retirement and beyond. And step three, which is part of that, find an advisor that has specialized knowledge in this area. Most don't, so you may have to look a bit. But it's very important that you have somebody that can get this right the first time. There are not a lot of second chances in this area.
Ed Slott, thank you so much for being with us today. We're going to go to IRA Help, get all of the information that we can find there. And if you're looking for more information on retirement related topics, we have a great free newsletter from the Alliance for Lifetime Income. Go to protectedincome.org and you can /subscribe. and you can sign up right there. We'll flash that on the screen so everybody can see it. Ed, thank you. Always a pleasure.
All right. Thanks, Gina. It was a great course. It was like one of our courses here just in this short time. We covered a lot of ground. Thanks.
We sure did. Thanks. Bye-bye, everybody.